Isabella Carter never thought a simple school activity would unravel her entire sense of worth. When Jason came home from Vancouver Middle School one afternoon, he told her about a new initiative, a program called Mother Swap. The idea was that students would spend a few days with another family to experience different parenting styles. It sounded innocent, even educational, so Isabella agreed. Maybe it would give her son a new perspective. Maybe he would finally see how much she loved him. She welcomed Ethan Miller Jason's classmate into her home for the weekend. She did everything she thought a good mother should do. She cooked him a full dinner, 4 dishes, and a steaming pot of soup exactly the way her own mother once taught her. She guided him through his homework with patience, and afterward she took him to the small amusement center near downtown Vancouver, trying to give him both care and fun. She thought the boy might smile or at least thank her, but at the end of the weekend, Ethan looked at her with the seriousness of a judge. "You're old-fashioned," he said flatly, adjusting the thin glasses on his nose. "You hover too much. My mom lets me breathe. She's modern stylish. She doesn't smother me. Having a mother like you must be a burden for Jason." His words cut her deeper than he could ever understand. She forced a smile, nodded, as if she could take the blow, but inside her chest something cracked. That night, Jason came home and repeated the words as if they were gospel. "Ethan's mom is beautiful and gentle. You can't compare Mom. Dad was right. You don't deserve to be my mother." Isabella froze. She had heard William complain for years, but to hear it echoed by her own child was unbearable. Still, she told herself she could change. If Jason wanted a mother like Linda Miller, then she would study Linda. She would transform herself into that perfect mold. She tried. She studied every polished move Linda Miller made, the fashionable outfits, the soft but commanding tone, the endless stream of parenting books she quoted. Isabella forced herself into that role, biting her tongue when she wanted to speak, smiling when she wanted to cry. Yet no matter how much she tried, Jason's eyes remained cold. Nothing was ever enough. The pressure wore her down. Her body grew weaker, her nights restless. One evening, when the sickness had finally tightened its grip, she gathered the courage to ask Jason for help. "I need some money to see the doctor," she whispered. He barely looked up from his phone. "You've lived 70, maybe 80 years already. Isn't that enough?" "Why waste money now? I already gave money to Chloe for her trip. You should figure it out yourself." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. Chloe Moore, the woman who hovered around William, the woman everyone whispered about, had become more deserving in her son's eyes than his own mother. At that moment, Isabella realized she had lost him completely. Days later, her body gave in. She died in despair, abandoned by the very people she had sacrificed her life for. But death was not the end. She opened her eyes and found herself back in time, reliving the moment when Ethan Miller first lectured her about how to be a proper mother. He handed her a small notebook, its cover labeled in careful letters. Perfect Mom 5.0 Handbook. She remembered this book all too well. It had been the start of her tragedy. The first time around, she believed him. She let the words of a 13-year-old and the flawless image of Linda Miller convince her that she was inadequate. She reshaped herself into a mother who never complained, who worked until her body broke, who silenced every need of her own. She became a woman who never traveled, never rested, never once said no. Every day began at 5:30 preparing breakfast and ended long past midnight with chores and lessons. She raised Jason, then raised his children, her own life swallowed by service. She thought surely he would see. Surely he would be grateful one day. But gratitude never came. Only disdain. She could still see that day at the hospital. She had asked for a small amount, just enough to buy her medicine. Jason sneered at her eyes filled with disgust. 75 years old, and you can't even afford $1,000 for treatment. Look at Chloe. Graceful all her life. No illnesses, no drama. Unlike you. Having a mother like you is a curse. He left her sitting alone on the hospital steps, the cold stone pressing into her bones as hours passed. The world blurred, and she finally understood that his rejection had been lifelong. He had never loved her, not as a boy, not as a man. Back in this second chance, Isabella held the handbook tighter. The words no longer looked wise. They looked like chains. Chains that had bound her into a life of servitude and erased her spirit. For the first time, she questioned the truth she had swallowed. Maybe she was not the failure. Maybe the failure was believing that erasing herself would win love. The memories of William's betrayal burned just as fiercely. He had called her outdated, boring, unworthy, while holding Chloe on his arm like a prize. He had poisoned Jason with those same words until her own son mirrored his contempt. She had lived decades under that weight, but in this moment, with the chance to begin again, Isabella felt a new fire rise in her chest. Her eyes stung not only with grief, but with a raw determination. She would not live another life buried under shame. She would not measure herself by Linda Miller's polished perfection or Chloe Moore's false charm. She would not let William Bennett define her worth. She was Isabella Carter, and she would fight for the right to exist as herself. Perhaps Jason would never love her the way she longed for. Perhaps he would always compare her to others. But she finally understood that her value could not depend on their approval. She had given her life once and died in despair. This time, she would live differently. She would break the cycle even if it meant standing alone. And so in the quiet of her room, clutching the cursed handbook that once destroyed her, Isabella whispered to herself a promise. No more. I will not live for them. I will live for me. Isabella Carter often thought back on the years when she had given up her dreams without hesitation, surrendering her career and her passions because William told her that a good wife stayed home because Jason needed her every hour of every day. She had built her entire world around the kitchen, around his homework, around their routines. She remembered the nights she endured the ache in her chest and refused to buy her own medicine so that she could afford the toy Jason wanted. For so long, she believed that sacrifice was what made a mother worthy. But now, in this second chance at life, she understood the answer no longer mattered. The past had buried her once, and she would not let it bury her again. What mattered was that she was alive, that she had been granted another chance, and this time she would live differently. With a strange calmness, she tossed aside the cursed handbook that had ruled her previous life. She picked up Ethan Miller's bag and thrust it back into his hands. The boy's eyes widened in surprise. "What are you doing?" he asked, confused by her sudden defiance. Isabella's smile was faint, tinged with exhaustion, but also with resolve. "I am not the right kind of mother you expect me to be," she told him gently, "and I will not waste your time pretending I am. Go home, Ethan." He opened his mouth ready to argue, but no words came. He simply stared at her as if he were seeing someone he could no longer control. Their houses were only a short walk apart, nestled in the quiet neighborhoods of Vancouver, so it did not take long for Isabella to escort him back. When she opened the door, the scene that greeted her pierced her heart more sharply than any insult. Linda Miller was crouched at the threshold, rinsing Jason's feet in a small basin of warm water, as though he were royalty. Jason stood there, his expression soft and tender, as he looked at her, an expression Isabella had longed for but never received. Ethan's face darkened instantly. He kicked over the basin water, splashing across the floor. "Who do you think you are, Jason?" he shouted. "How dare you make my mother wash your feet? Your own mother is right there." He jabbed a finger toward Isabella, his voice rising with fury. Jason barely spared her a glance, his gaze fixed with devotion on Linda. "Today is Mother Swap," he said coldly. "By the rules, she's my mom, not her." His eyes flicked toward Isabella with disdain, as if she were an intruder in her own son's life. Isabella waited for Ethan's next words, but what came startled everyone. His face flushed red, his voice cracked with something raw. "I don't want a mother like her," he cried. "I want your mom to be mine. I wish Linda Miller were my mother." Tears slipped down his cheeks, and the room fell into stunned silence. Linda bit her lip, looking embarrassed, then forced a gentle smile. "Children say foolish things. Please don't take it to heart," she murmured to Isabella. "Perhaps it's better if Jason stays at my house a few more days until things calm down." Isabella remembered this scene from her previous life. She remembered how desperately she had tried to pull Jason home, how she mimicked Linda's every move in an attempt to win his approval. But Jason had only grown colder, mocking her behind her back for trying too hard, for being pathetic. That humiliation had haunted her until the day she died. This time, Isabella would not repeat the mistake. Her voice was steady when she answered. "If he wants to stay, let him stay. However long he wishes. I won't stand in the way." 3 pairs of eyes widened in shock. Ethan glared with a mix of anger and disbelief. Jason looked as though he had been handed a gift he never expected, delight shining on his face. Linda's smile flickered with something unreadable before she masked it with sweetness. "Are you sure this is all right?" she asked cautiously. Isabella turned her gaze toward Jason. "What do you think?" Jason did not hesitate. His eyes gleamed as he looked at Linda. "I want to live here forever. Can I?" Linda laughed softly, feigning surprise. "Of course, dear," she said. But her eyes slid toward Isabella, clearly expecting her to object. Instead, Isabella let out a small laugh, almost amused. She turned on her heel and walked away. "If you love each other so much," she said over her shoulder, "then be together for the rest of your lives. Consider me a stranger." That weekend, Jason did not return home, and for the first time in decades, Isabella found herself with a stretch of time that belonged entirely to her. The silence of her house was not heavy, but liberating. She called an old friend and went shopping, strolling through downtown Portland, as though she were 20 again. She sat in a movie theater without checking her phone to see if Jason needed help with homework. She slept until 9:30 in the morning and ordered takeout instead of rising before dawn to cook. She brewed herself a cup of coffee and carried it to the small patio where she sat with a novel and let the hours slip by in a haze of sunshine and pages. The air tasted sweeter than she remembered. For the first time, she felt the stirring of a self she had buried long ago. When she scrolled through her phone and saw that her favorite singer was holding a concert in Los Angeles, she did not hesitate. She booked a flight, a hotel, and tickets without asking anyone's permission. She had not abandoned her talents completely. In spare moments, she still wrote essays and stories, little pieces she posted online that earned her enough for pocket money. In her previous life, she had given up even that, pouring every cent into Jason and William until she had nothing left. Now sitting in an arena filled with thousands of voices singing along, waving a light stick high above her head, Isabella felt a freedom she had never known. Her phone buzzed during the encore. William's name flashed across the screen, demanding attention. She pressed decline. The second time it rang, she answered only to see Jason's face filling half the screen, one eye swollen purple, his lips split. William's voice thundered through the line. "Where are you?" "Do you have any idea what happened? Your son has been beaten like this, and you didn't answer the phone." Isabella's stomach clenched, but she kept her voice even. Wasn't he staying with the Millers? Who would dare to hurt him there? Jason's jaw tightened, his mouth a thin line. "Who else, Ethan? He hit me just because I called Linda Mom. Can you believe it?" Isabella exhaled slowly, her voice calm, almost detached. "Then perhaps you should think about what you did to push him that far." The silence that followed was deafening. Jason's eyes widened, unable to comprehend that his mother would no longer leap to his defense, would no longer take his cruelty and repay it with devotion. For the first time, Isabella felt no fear in standing her ground. She had lived an entire lifetime, sacrificing for a son who despised her. This time, she would no longer beg for love that was never offered. Isabella stared at the screen, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "So, Linda Miller didn't step in when Ethan hit you?" she asked. Jason's eyes grew wet, but he wiped them quickly, refusing to answer. In that silence, Isabella understood. Of course, Linda would side with her own son. No parent could ever be completely fair when blood was involved. But before she could even process the thought, William's voice broke in sharp and defensive. "Don't twist things with that narrow little mind of yours." Linda would never encourage Ethan to hurt Jason. She is thoughtful, gentle, and nothing like the outdated woman you make her out to be. There it was again, the same refrain that had echoed through her past life. Every time Isabella dared to question the perfect facade Linda wore, like armor, William would leap to her defense. His loyalty to Linda's softness, to her carefully polished charm, had already seeped into Jason's heart. Her son believed without question that Linda was the model of what a mother should be. What neither of them ever admitted was that Jason's comfortable life, the roof over his head, the endless opportunities had been built on Isabella's silent labor. Linda's kindness had always been limited to words and occasional gestures, never the grueling daily sacrifice Isabella had made. Still, Jason stayed at the Miller home for 3 long days. Isabella had no idea what happened behind those closed doors, but when he returned, his demeanor had changed. The boy who once parroted William's every accusation now stared at the floor, his face etched with disappointment. William glanced around the room, then sighed as if he were about to deliver wisdom. "You see the situation?" he said, his eyes sliding toward Isabella. "It's better if Linda handles this. Maybe Jason should live with her for a while until things settle. After all, you're barely at home these days." He launched into a speech rehearsed and patronized, But Isabella did not let him finish. She cut him off with a nod that felt like a knife. "Fine," she said. "I hope you both enjoy yourselves." For a moment, the room froze. William blinked, startled, as though he had misheard her. Jason lifted his head, confusion shadowing his eyes. "You mean it?" William asked suspiciously. Isabella lifted her hand in a careless wave. "That's all I have to say. Goodbye." Then she ended the call with a calmness that shook them both. She thought back to that other life, to the night she had sat outside the hospital gates after Jason abandoned her. She had replayed every mistake, every moment she had chosen silence instead of standing up for herself. That was when it struck her she had lost from the very beginning. She had lost the moment William named their son Jason, a name chosen not for meaning or family history, but because it resembled the woman he secretly worshipped. She had spent a lifetime clutching at a breeze that was never meant to stay a ghost she could never hold. If she could not keep them, then she would no longer try. When Isabella returned home, William was waiting, his finger pointing toward a black swan cake sitting on the table. "Linda bought this for you," he said smoothly. "Look at how kind she is. A single mother raising her son while working full-time, and she still thinks of you. You should appreciate her, help her whenever you can." Isabella's lips curved into a small smile. She remembered the gifts Linda used to bring, the fruit baskets and pastries, the soft greetings of sister. But she also remembered the truth she had discovered later. Those offerings were leftovers from vacations Linda and William took together. The sweetness had always been laced with betrayal. Isabella nodded lightly, her tone almost playful. "She seems to care about you too. Maybe she should just move in, keep you company all the time." William shot to his feet, his face tightening. "Isabella, when did you become so generous? Or do you have another man? Is that it?" His voice rose in anger. "You used to fuss over Jason panicking if he was gone in half a day. Now you're ready to leave him with someone else without a second thought. What changed?" Isabella tilted her head, her smile calm. "Linda isn't a stranger, is she? She's the woman you trust most." Her words landed like a blow, and for once William had no retort. But a moment later, his suspicion flared again. "Where have you been these past days? Tell me the truth. Are you seeing your ex?" His hand shook as he grabbed for her phone, sweat beading at his temples. He scrolled through her purchases and tickets, his relief visible when he found nothing damning. But then his expression soured. "Really, Isabella? You're a mother, and you're still wasting money chasing concerts, following idols. Don't you feel ashamed? This time, I'll let it slide. Don't let it happen again." He tossed the phone back to her, already pulling out his laptop, his fingers flying over the keys with an anxious rhythm. People often buried themselves in busyness when guilt gnawed at them, and William was no exception. He coughed lightly, then added with feigned concern, "Jason is still a boy. Linda can't handle everything. There are things only you should do for him. Don't think you can just walk away." Isabella watched him, the man she had once obeyed, the man who had clipped her wings until she no longer recognized herself. But now she felt no fear, no urge to defend her worth. She had glimpsed freedom, tasted it in the quiet mornings and the roar of the concert crowd, and she knew she would never return to the cage he built. William could accuse, he could sneer, he could drown in his own paranoia, but she would not carry the weight of it any longer. Isabella looked at William with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Then maybe you should move in with Linda, too." His eyes widened, his lips pressed into a thin line, and he scrambled for an excuse. "Don't twist this, Isabella. Linda and I are just friends. Nothing more. The kids are always around. We haven't done anything, and even if they weren't there, nothing would happen. His voice cracked with nervousness, his body shifting in that awkward way that once might have amused her. In another life, she had almost never seen him like this, because she had always been the one clinging, begging, trying to hold him. Every time she reached for him, he pulled away with irritation. Now, when she no longer cared, he panicked. How pitiful, she thought. She remembered vividly what he had said when she was 75, after she discovered he had taken a trip with Linda. We just admired the snow, watched the wind. I never even held her hand, he told her. As though that confession proved his loyalty. For decades, he believed that by not touching Linda, he was honoring his marriage and that this so-called restraint gave him the right to unleash his bitterness on Isabella, to punish her with his sharp words, to treat her like an obstacle in his life. Jason had always echoed his father's contempt. He had said it again and again. Linda was William's true love, and if not for his mother, they would have been together long ago. "You stole him," Jason accused. "Now he shows her a little kindness, and you complain. What's the harm in that?" Those words had broken her once. She had lived too many years under their judgment, too many years being cast as the villain who stood between William and his white moonlight. But she had no intention of repeating that fate. When William and Jason moved their things into the Miller house, Isabella quietly packed her own suitcase and drove to her mother's home for a much-needed rest. She sipped coffee in her childhood kitchen, breathed air that was free of bitterness, and felt lighter than she had in decades. Meanwhile, Jason was filling his social media feed with post after post, painting himself as the victim. "At last, God has given me my real mother," he wrote. "Ethan isn't the only one who deserves Linda. Today we fought again, but my real mom will always be Linda. My birth mother might as well be dead." Isabella read the words once her hands steady her chest, oddly calm. They no longer had the power to crush her. Not long after, Linda herself called her voice weary, as though she had played the role to exhaustion. "Isabella, Jason misses you. Please come home," she said sweetly, trying to sound sincere. Isabella let the message roll off her. She did not hurry back. She stayed until New Year's Eve, before she returned quietly without warning William. She opened the door to find him and Linda sitting side by side at the dining table, their hands busy folding dumplings as if they had always belonged together. Jason was beside them, laughing, his face lit with a joy Isabella had not seen in years. "Mommy," he said eagerly to Linda, "look at this filling. Did I do it right?" Linda turned to answer, then froze when she noticed Isabella in the doorway. She stood quickly flustered. "Don't misunderstand," she stammered. "He just meant he wanted me as a godmother, nothing more." William's face tightened with unease. "You're back earlier than I expected," he said. Isabella ignored him and asked, "Where's Ethan?" Jason jumped in, his voice defensive. "He smashed my things out of jealousy and stormed out. He'll be back when Aunt Linda calms him down. I know she won't play favorites." Linda forced a smile, but Isabella could see the turmoil in her eyes. She remembered all the messages Linda had sent while she was away, hints and pleas that betrayed how difficult Jason had become. The perfect mother facade was slipping. Linda had always been praised as gentle, composed, endlessly patient, but Isabella knew better. She was human, and even the best actress had limits. Isabella raised an eyebrow, feigning disinterest. So that was Ethan I saw outside walking off with someone. Linda's face blanched panic flickering across her features. She leapt up, ready to chase after him, but William's hand shot out, catching her wrist. He chuckled, forcing calm. "He's 13 already, as tall as me. Let him go. If you follow, you'll only encourage his stubbornness. Besides, you just promised Jason you'd help him with dumplings." Linda's eyes darted with worry, her composure cracking despite her efforts to appear serene. Jason clutched her sleeve, his voice urgent. "You said you'd stay with me. Ethan was wrong this time, and you can't just run to him." Isabella laughed softly, unable to hold it in. "Jason, you're mistaken. Of course Linda will favor her own son. What mother wouldn't?" Jason's face flamed, his voice rising in protest, but Isabella no longer bent beneath his accusations. She could see the fragile mask beginning to crumble on Linda's face, could see William straining to hold together the fantasy he had built. For the first time in her life, Isabella felt free to tell the truth aloud, and it felt like breathing after years underwater. Jason's words cut through the room like shards of glass. "Linda isn't an ordinary mother like you. She treats everyone fairly. She doesn't pick favorites." The praise fell on Linda like a crown of flowers, and for a moment she basked in it, though her feet seemed rooted, unable to step forward. Isabella's hands trembled, but instead of collapsing as she once would have, she pulled out her phone, snapped a picture of the cozy scene, and posted it online with no comment. 15 minutes later, the front door slammed open, and Ethan stormed in, his anger spilling into every corner of the house. With one furious kick, he overturned the entire table dumplings, scattering across the floor. Then, seizing the rolling pin, he swung it hard, striking Jason across the head. Jason screamed in shock and pain. Almost simultaneously, William reacted with a violence Isabella had rarely seen. He lashed out, kicking Ethan so forcefully that the boy flew back against the wall. Linda shrieked, rushing toward her son, her voice trembling. "Have you lost your mind?" she cried, her arms reaching for Ethan while her fists pounded weakly against William's chest. She even grabbed dumplings from the floor and hurled them at him, her grief making her wild. "You cannot hit my son," she shouted. "Look at yours. He clings to me, provokes Ethan constantly, and you think that's right?" Her eyes turned to Isabella, filled with accusation. "And you? How can you stand there without shame, watching your own child behave this way?" Isabella shrugged, her laugh quiet but sharp. "My son doesn't love me. He adores you. What do you want me to do? Should I follow that ridiculous handbook of yours, serving him like a servant every day? If that's what it takes, I'd rather divorce and be done with it." The words dropped like stones in the room. Linda's eyes lit up, surprise and satisfaction flickering together. William's expression shifted, too stunned at hearing what Isabella had sworn she would never say. In the past, she had vowed she would die before leaving him. It was that vow that had given Linda the confidence to design the so-called handbook, a weapon meant to grind Isabella down until she surrendered. In her previous life, Isabella had been too blind, too stubborn, to see the trap enduring humiliation after humiliation without ever asking for freedom. But this time she had already decided. She would give them what they wanted and reclaim her own soul in the process. Linda, startled by the declaration, forgot about Ethan, moaning on the floor until a beat later. She rushed to him, fussing, insisting she had never intended things to go this far. "Don't misunderstand me," she muttered. "This isn't my doing. Solve your problems between yourselves. I'm leaving." Yet before she stepped out the door, she cast a long, silent look at William, a glance filled with meaning. Jason ran after her, tugging at her sleeve. "Don't go, Aunt Linda. You promised we'd finish making dumplings together." Linda forced a smile, hiding the flicker of distaste in her eyes. "After your family works things out, I'll come back," she said gently. Jason nodded eagerly, oblivious to the truth shining in her gaze. Poor foolish boy, Isabella thought. If Linda ever became his stepmother, he would quickly learn how shallow that sweetness truly was. When Linda and Ethan left, the silence in the house pressed heavy. William sighed deeply, the sound tinged with reproach. He looked at Isabella with an expression that dripped with disappointment. "You haven't been home, haven't cleaned or cooked. What have you been doing all this time?" Isabella's voice was calm. "I was gone for 2 weeks, no calls, no messages, and only now you bother to ask. Isn't it a little late? What were you so busy with that you couldn't dial my number once?" He flinched, his face betraying a flash of guilt. For once, he could not find the words to cover himself. The awkward silence hung between them until Jason broke it with a bitter laugh. "Mom, you always force people, always rigid and unpleasant. No one likes you. Not like Aunt Linda. She's gentle, she's easy, she's everything you're not." Isabella laughed softly, the sound tinged with sadness. "You've only known her as your mother for a few days, Jason. Let's see how long the shine lasts. Maybe one day you'll realize who truly stood by you." Jason spat, his face twisted. "Stop fooling yourself. If it weren't for blood, I wouldn't even call you Mom. You're nothing but extra baggage in this house. Do us a favor and just leave." The words struck like knives, but Isabella no longer felt the wound. She turned her gaze on William. "Do you agree with him?" He lowered his head, his brows knitting tight. "Isabella, you know I've never wronged you, but our children's happiness matters more than anything." Isabella nodded slowly, almost tenderly. "You're right. Their well-being is most important. That's why we should divorce." The room froze. William's eyes went wide, his body stiff as if turned to stone. Even Jason fell silent, his anger melting into stunned disbelief. "You can't be serious," he stammered. Isabella smiled serene. "I don't joke about things like this." Jason grew frantic, turning to his father. "Dad, hurry! Draft the divorce papers before she changes her mind." William barked, "Don't speak nonsense. This isn't something we decide in a rush." His voice was stern, but his eyes betrayed his panic. Isabella saw it all. She had finally struck at the heart of their carefully woven lies. William was always the same, always wanting everything, grasping at desire, but terrified of his reputation. Barely an hour after our fight, he appeared in front of me, holding out a draft agreement, his voice carefully measured. "For Jason's sake, we'll divorce temporarily," he explained. "Once he's stable, we can remarry." I flipped through the pages, then tossed the document back onto the table. "This division of assets isn't correct." His brow furrowed. "What's wrong with it?" I looked straight at him, my voice steady. "According to the law, everything you purchased while we were married belongs to both of us. The houses, the cars, even the monthly allowances you slipped to Linda Miller. Every cent counts as marital property, and I'm entitled to half." His face was drained of color. He gaped at me, shame rising in his expression as the truth sank in. At last, cornered and speechless, he amended the draft, signing over the share that was rightfully mine. On the first working day after New Year's, We filed for divorce, entering the 30-day waiting period required by the court. The day I packed my bags to leave, Linda stood by William's side, peeking out from behind him with a practiced expression of sorrow. Isabella. I never wanted it to come to this. I'm so sorry, she murmured, eyes glistening. I smiled gently. If you marry him someday, I only ask that you treat Jason well. Don't let him suffer. She nodded eagerly, her voice smooth with practiced virtue. Of course. I've always been fair with children, never showing favoritism. William gave a soft cough, feigning exasperation. Isabella, don't twist things. There's nothing between me and Linda. She was struggling, and I simply helped a friend. That's all. The hypocrisy was almost laughable. I didn't bother replying. I turned, lifted my suitcase, and walked away. From this moment forward, that house. Those people, their tangled lives, none of it had anything to do with me. Yet even freedom could not silence William's need to reach for me. 2 days after the papers were filed, he sent the first message complaining that Ethan was unruly, already fighting Jason over the bedrooms. On the 3rd day, he texted again, whining about the burden of raising 2 children, especially one who was not his own. By the 5th day, the tone had shifted into quiet resentment toward Linda. He claimed both boys pestered her constantly, that Jason struggled with his homework, while Ethan pretended ignorance just to steal her attention. And she just lets Jason figure things out on his own, he wrote. It's not like before. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I filled my feed with selfies, each one brighter than the last. I cut my hair into a new style, signed up for yoga, learned to paint my lips red and contour my cheekbones. My spirit and my reflection grew sharper, more alive each day. I had no time to be dragged back into their chaos. Then, at the Lantern Festival, William called. The moment I answered, he was sighing into the phone, full of self-pity. Every year I take Jason home for the holiday, he said. Chloe wanted to see her grandfather too, but at the last minute, Linda only bought tickets for Chloe, not for Jason, and she insisted I follow her out of town. Now Jason is upset. Before he could finish, Jason's voice burst through as he grabbed the phone. Mom, how could she do this to me? During Mother Swap, she was so sweet, but now she treats me like I don't matter. My voice was calm, almost tender. She's the mother you chose, Jason. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Try asking her gently, she might soften. There was a pause, then a quiet plea. Mom, could you stop the divorce when you and Dad were together? Linda treated me better. Please don't leave us. A bitter laugh echoed in my chest, though I did not let it escape. Of course he could not see. Of course he would never admit fault. Blood made him mine, but gratitude was beyond him. No, Jason, I said softly. That isn't possible. Then I ended the call, ignoring the repeated buzz of their attempts to reach me again. Instead, I forwarded every one of William's pathetic texts along with the recording of Jason's whining directly to Linda. That was when her mask cracked. Messages spilled out, the carefully cultivated composure crumbling into desperation. She accused me of scheming, of trying to reverse the divorce during the waiting period. She sneered that even if William was angry with her now, she could win him back with a little softness that he was too weak to resist. She still believed she controlled him, still believed she could shape every outcome with a smile. She didn't yet understand the man she clung to. William Bennett was not noble or loyal. He was a hypocrite, a man terrified of shame yet addicted to desire. He had played us both, but unlike Linda, I was unplaying. I no longer wanted him, his house, his false kindness, or his lies. He could keep them all. What I carried away was my freedom, my strength, and a self I had nearly lost forever. The man William Bennett loved most had always been himself. He would never risk his reputation, never let the world accuse him of abandoning his own son, no matter how deeply he longed to follow Linda Miller back to her family. As I predicted, his social media posts told the story. Eventually, Linda and her daughter Chloe had no choice but to compromise, returning with him to spend the holiday with his relatives. The next morning, my former sister-in-law messaged me, her words laced with excitement. There was a grand drama unfolding in the Bennett household. My former mother-in-law, forever scheming, had decided to test Linda by showing blatant favoritism toward Chloe. She scolded Ethan, humiliated him in front of the family, pushing him aside again and again. Linda, desperate to prove herself, went along with it, ignoring Ethan, treating him coldly, as if convincing herself that if she could endure for just 1 month, the divorce would be finalized and she would have everything she wanted. But only a week later, Ethan appeared at my door, a phone in his hand, the camera recording as he looked straight into the lens. "Mom," he said loudly. "You look so beautiful these days." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You must be mistaken. I'm not your mother." He shrugged, unbothered. "I don't care. Ever since the mother swap program, I decided I would never switch back. From now on, you're my mom." His words were impulsive, designed to provoke Linda, yet he stared at me with stubborn fire. "I'm sorry," I told him, my voice firm, "but I won't accept a son like you." His face darkened, his body blocking my path. "You don't have anything left," he growled. "Your husband is gone. Your real son chose someone else. I'm the only one willing to stay by your side. How can you reject me?" I gently pushed him aside, calm as stone. "You're wrong. I have plenty. I have money. I have time. I have freedom. I have work I love. And I have the family who raised me to be who I am. That is more than enough." His teeth clenched, his voice almost breaking. "But you lost the two most important people, your husband and your son." A smile touched my lips, tinged with bitter irony. If keeping them means destroying myself, then I would rather have nothing. The boy's eyes filled with tears. He screamed, desperate. "You can't abandon me. You have to fight for Jason. Don't let him steal my mother from me." I shrugged, unmoved. "That isn't my battle. Your mother is admired by everyone. Who wouldn't love her?" Ethan grabbed my arm, pleading, now his voice cracking. "No, if she took my mother, then I'll take hers. You must treat me the way you treated Jason. You must." I sighed. "And what exactly do you want from me? Should I follow that ridiculous handbook you wrote, serving you like a maid, sacrificing every breath?" His expression was deadly serious. "Yes, that's how it should be." For a moment, I wanted to laugh. Instead, I tilted my head. "Fine. You're just a child. You can stay here for a few days. But let's be clear, you are not my son. And I will not live by that book. If you stay, you live by my rules." He fell silent, thinking, then finally nodded slowly. So I welcomed him into my home. I gave him a room of his own, drew up a study plan, and cooked 3 balanced meals each day. After homework, we went to the local arcade together, playing side by side. I cared for him much as I had cared for Jason, but with one difference, all the things Jason had refused to do with me, Ethan now had to join me in. We went skiing, we played video games, we wandered snowy streets, laughing at nothing at all. I remembered the way Jason used to wrinkle his nose when I suggested these things, asking if I really wanted to embarrass him with my clumsy ignorance of the modern world. Each time, his rejection had pierced me. But with Ethan, every activity felt new, full of color, like I had been given another chance to taste joy. On the first day, Ethan was still sullen, glued to his phone, waiting for messages that never came. By the second and third day, his frown softened, a smile breaking across his face in fleeting moments. He was not extraordinary, not a prodigy, but he carried something precious, unshakable confidence. Even when he failed, he laughed. "It's fine," he said after another low score. "I'm just a normal guy, but when I try, I shock everyone." When he fell hard on the slopes, snow burning his cheeks, I reached down and pulled him up. He grinned, breathless. "See, I'm the favored child of heaven. Luck always saves me." Then he turned his shining eyes toward me, his voice full of awe. "I never knew you could ski like that. Mom, you're amazing." For the first time in a long time, I felt the word "Mom" land not as a wound, but as a strange gift. I did not accept him as my son. But in those fleeting hours, I allowed myself to be simply a mother again, not for William, not for Jason, not for anyone's approval, but for myself. Ethan still refused to change the way he called me, and I decided to let it be. In his eyes, there was something I had never seen before, a flicker of admiration that warmed me in an unexpected way. I taught him how to ski, how to focus on homework, even how to write the first strokes of Japanese, and each lesson felt like proof that every minute could matter if you believed it did. My social media feed is filled with photos of him, snapshots of progress, tiny victories. I once longed to celebrate with Jason. The day his teacher praised him for remarkable improvement, Ethan leapt into the air, shouting that maybe he was a genius after all. He rushed home and posted 10 updates in a row, his pride spilling over in every word. That was when I realized the truth I had missed for years. My way of teaching had never been wrong. It had only been rejected because Jason never loved me enough to believe in me. Now I had my answer, and with it came the decision to close this chapter. I folded Ethan's clothes neatly into his bag, preparing to send him home. At that exact moment, he burst into the room, grinning, his excitement bubbling over. "Mom, come with me to the cosplay festival. All our favorite characters will be there." His eyes fell on the packed suitcase, and his voice faltered, the joy draining from his face. "Mom," he asked softly, "what are you doing?" I held steady. "You're not my son. I can't keep you here forever. It's time to go home." Before he could reply, a frantic voice shouted from the doorway. "Isabella, give me back my son." Ethan opened the door, and there stood Linda Miller, hair matted with oil. Eyes swollen from tears, clothes mismatched, even her shoes on the wrong feet. She looked nothing like the graceful woman who once held court with ease. Ethan froze, staring at her with shock, as if he had never seen her so undone. Linda's tears spilled freely. "Ethan, come home with me, please." But he turned away coldly. "You love Chloe more. Go take care of her. I'm better off here. Yesterday, my teacher praised me. I'm not the failure you always said I was." Linda clawed at her hair, nearly breaking. It was the same madness I had endured in another life, the same endless cycle of trying and failing to be enough. "You are my son," she cried. "You must come home. I'll make things better. You'll have a father like everyone else." That was the spark. Ethan exploded, his voice fierce. "Don't say his name. I hate William Bennett. He will never be my father." The words were raw but true. In my last life, William had always pretended to support Linda while ignoring Ethan, even fighting with her because of the boy. He had vanished from home, leaving Jason to play the role of caretaker, never once offering Ethan the love he needed. Linda sobbed harder. "She's poisoned you. Don't listen to her. Come back to me." Ethan shoved her hand away, his face carved with disdain. I smiled faintly. "It's too late. You should both leave. This house isn't mine anymore. I sold it. The new owner will be here soon." Ethan panicked, clutching my sleeve. "Then take me with you. Wherever you go, I'll follow." Before I could answer, Linda's hand cracked across his face. The slap echoed in the room, leaving his cheek bright red. "I'm your mother!" she screamed. Ethan stood stunned, then shoved her back and bolted out the door. The sight tore open old wounds. Memories of my previous life where I had been abandoned, unloved, left to wither. For a moment my chest ached with the same despair, but then sunlight streamed through the window, warm and steady. It was spring, and everything that had crushed me was gone, left behind. On the final day of the waiting period, before the divorce was to be finalized, it was Jason's birthday. William flooded my phone with dozens of messages begging me to come, threatening that if I refused, he would never sign the papers. I went not for him, not even for Jason, but to close the door once and for all. When I arrived, Jason was tearing open a gift from Linda. A mountain bike worth $2,000 gleamed under the lights. Jason shouted with glee, his eyes alight with worship. William looked at Linda with softened eyes, his earlier coldness melting. "I misjudged you," he said warmly. "You've always cared for Jason." My former mother-in-law nodded with satisfaction, her face shining with approval. I watched them all, feeling only the hollow truth settle in my bones. Money had triumphed where my love never did. It could purchase Jason's smile, William's gratitude, even a mother-in-law's praise. But as I stood there, I felt none of the old pain. The cords that bound me had already snapped. They could stay in their gilded cage, feeding on lies and gifts, clapping for each other in a theater of pretense. My freedom was not there, and I no longer wanted to belong in that play. Suddenly, every eye in the room turned toward me. Isabella, Jason muttered, "Where's your gift?" "You probably didn't even bother. You don't have any taste anyway." He tried to sound casual, but his gaze kept darting toward the door behind me, as if expecting something to arrive. I remembered the messages he had sent me days earlier, while I was sheltering Ethan, accusing me of betraying my own blood to care for someone else's child. I had never replied. Now I smiled faintly and answered without hesitation. "I know you wouldn't like anything I gave you, Jason, so I didn't buy a gift." Faces froze. Jason scowled with fury. Linda's eyes widened with disbelief, and William yanked me aside with harsh impatience. His voice was low and angry. "What's wrong with you? This is your own son's birthday, and you come empty-handed. Do you really want this divorce so badly?" My eyes met his, and I laughed softly. "Do you think this is some kind of performance?" His pupils narrowed and his jaw clenched. You're dressed like that, all done up. Don't tell me you found someone else. I turned away, my tone flat. I don't have time to dirty myself with your kind of suspicions. Whatever you think in your heart, you already know. All I want is for you to sign the divorce papers on time. He began pacing, restless, desperate. Isabella, we don't have to go through with this. I've thought a lot these past weeks. You're still the one who fits me best. Linda has flaws, too. I don't want to waste years building a life with her. If you pretend you don't know if you stay like before, we can make it work. I'll even love Jason more. His words were a plea disguised as reason. My laugh was sharp as glass. So the plan is you and Linda enjoy yourselves while I stay home unpaid servant forgotten wife. That's your idea of happiness, he fumbled, denying. No, that's not what I meant. I cut him off. Whatever you meant, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Fine, I'll cut off Linda completely. I'll end it. Will that satisfy you? I looked at him with pure disgust. It's too late. I don't want you anymore. At that moment, Jason rushed in, shoving William's hand off me. Dad, why are you holding her back? Aunt Linda is the one who treats me well. I want her as my mom. I don't need Isabella. Let's go. William's eyes bored me. Isabella, say something strong. This is your last chance. I raised my middle finger with a smile, a gesture that silenced even him. Not far away, Linda was watching her face stormy, yet she quickly plastered on a sugary smile and wheeled Jason's new mountain bike closer. Jason, try this one first. If it's not good enough, I'll buy you a better one. Anything for you. Jason's grin returned, reaching for the handlebars. Then a gust of air rushed past me. Ethan had been outside listening, and he darted into the room, seizing the bike as if it were treasure. He spun it around in his hands, ignoring Jason's protests. Jason shouted, his face red. That's mine, give it back. But Ethan, taller and stronger, shoved him back with one solid hit. Get lost, you fat little brat. Linda's panic was instant. Ethan, don't do this. I'll buy you one too. But Ethan was shaking, his voice wild. I don't want anything from you. All you care about is men and Jason. You've never been my mother. You want me gone, fine. I'll make it easy for you. With that, he hurled the bike aside, pulled a knife from his pocket, and slashed deep into his arm. Blood poured down in shocking rivers, splattering across the floor. A sickening memory surged back, another life, another night when I had held a blade against my own skin, begging for a single glance of pity from Jason, receiving only silence while everyone else carried on as if I were invisible. I remembered how foolishly I had thought pain could earn me love. But here, at least, there was some trace of humanity. Linda screamed, dropping to her knees, sobbing, pleading with Ethan to stop. Yet he only laughed through his tears, crazed, cutting another line into his flesh. His eyes found mine glistening with something desperate, a plea he could not voice. Linda saw it too, and she spun toward me, begging, Isabella, please, say something. He listens to you. He always compares me to you. If you speak, he'll stop. Linda collapsed completely, throwing away every shred of pride as she struck her head against the floor in front of me. It's my fault I'm greedy. I wanted to steal everything from you. Please save my son. He's all I have. Before I could speak, Jason cut in sharply. No one should interfere. Mom is my mother. Linda is my father's fiancée. They both belong to me. So no one should take sides. Linda's eyes turned to ice, and she slapped Jason hard across the face, his lips splitting. "Shut your mouth! If my son dies, I'll kill you!" William roared in outrage, dragging Jason behind him. "Your son is out of control, and now you're hitting mine." "How could I not have seen how cruel you really are?" Linda snapped, gripping his collar, her voice raw with fury. "My child is hurting himself, and you call me cruel. Do you know how many times this month I forced Ethan to bow to flatter you and your boy just to keep your love? You don't remember that." Jason froze wide-eyed. "What? You weren't sincere with me." Linda laughed bitterly, her words cutting through his fantasy. "Sincere? Who could ever truly love a boy? His own mother rejects." The room fell into suffocating silence. Desperate. Linda turned back to Ethan, trying to snatch the knife from his hand. I reached out slowly. "Ethan, give it to me. We'll get you bandaged and you'll go home with your mother." His nose twitched, his eyes red. He moved as if to hand it to me, but at the last instant jerked back and drove the blade straight into his chest. Time stopped. Only Linda's scream split the air, tearing the quiet into shreds. Ethan died at just 13 years old. No one could know what went through his mind in those final seconds. But I remembered. In another life, when I lay dying in a hospital bed, he had visited me once. For all the years he had mocked and dismissed me in the end, he alone crossed the ocean to whisper a single word: sorry. His voice had been soft as wind, but I heard it. That was why in this life I had opened my door to him without hesitation. Linda wept until her body broke bedridden for days. When she emerged again, she disappeared from sight, and in her absence, William came back to me dragging Jason along, clutching a bouquet, his eyes burning with false devotion. "Wife, let's start over. From now on, it will just be the three of us." Jason added shyly, "Mom, I miss you. Please come home. I'll behave." I laughed without warmth. "If you refuse to divorce, we'll go to court. I have to." Jason burst into tears, clutching at my hand. "Mom, I know I was wrong. You're the one who loves me most. Please don't leave me. I'll never disrespect you again." But in my mind, I heard his future words, the cruel sentence he once spat. When I was old and frail. "You've lived long enough. Why don't you just die early?" The memory filled me with contempt. I shook him off and walked away. They didn't give up easily. For more than a month, they followed me everywhere, begging, pleading, apologizing. When I prepared to file suit, William finally relented and signed the divorce. I didn't ask why, I simply signed my name and ended the vile tie once and for all. I changed every contact, moved to a small town in the north, and began the quiet life I had always deserved. One afternoon, my mother called. Her voice trembled as she explained that William had fallen and was now paralyzed. He had been visiting a construction site when a heated call from home distracted him, and he plunged from a great height. He would never walk again. My mother added that Jason, unable to reach me, often went to her instead, crying about his suffering. The truth emerged. Linda had shown up that very day, kneeling before William, begging forgiveness, promising to dedicate herself fully to him and Jason after marriage. He believed her and turned immediately to sign the divorce papers with me. But after they married, the facade cracked. Outwardly, she was the perfect wife and model stepmother praised by neighbors and friends. Behind closed doors, she wielded her words like knives. She lifted Jason up only to shove him down, praised him only to remind him he was never enough. Even when he improved, even when he brought home good grades, she sighed and said she had expected more. Slowly, methodically, she dismantled his confidence until he began to believe he was worthless. To outsiders, she looked like a saint, endlessly patient, endlessly giving. They never understood why Jason, with both a father and stepmother, lived as if in a house without parents. But I knew. That was Linda's true power. She knew how to control people from the inside out, to use affection as chains to twist loyalty into dependence. Now William sat in a wheelchair, his body broken, while Jason was only 13, already marked by her shadows. Their suffering had only just begun. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.